everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday Night Live show. Tonight we have Kurt here, with us, co-founder of Vaping Saved My Life, and he is also on the advisory board of World Vapors Alliance, and he's an advocate out of South Africa. So we're going to be chatting with him this evening. How's everybody doing today? Thank you so much for coming on, Kurt. Sorry.
She's so nervous.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much for getting up and being with us. I know that it's a crazy hour. Yeah.
Well, what time is it over there?
It's just turned 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to get those right now.
Next time when you're in part of the woods, I'll buy you a drink.
Yeah.
Another proof that it's not a flat earth.
Yeah. Darn.
Are you sure?
So, Kurt, how was your week?
My week's been busy, and it's getting busier and busier. So, yeah, there's a lot of things happening, and there's a lot of projects that I'm now involved in. So, yeah, life's getting very interesting very quickly. So,
yeah, it seems like it's never ending, right?
Yeah.
I feel like every time I get involved in something else, it's like one more thing pops up, and I'm like, sure, why not? How about you, John? How's your week been?
I'm having a great week. I'm deciding whether or not I want to just kind of take a day and drive to San Francisco on Friday and do some pictures. So I'm kind of debating the woods or the city, woods or city. Maybe I'll do a poll, see where everybody wants to go.
Woods. Yeah, I say woods. Yeah, my vote's for woods.
The woods got snow though. Yeah, I'm not a cold person. Oh, look at the guy. The guy is raising his hands over there in the bottom right-hand corner. He probably has never seen snow in his friggin' life there living in Australia. And he's like, so?
Yeah, all right, smart cookie. I used to snowboard, so yeah.
Oh.
Good luck with that one.
Sandboard? You mean sandboard?
No, snowboard.
Snowboard? All right. I trust you.
How about you, Paul? How's your week going?
Well, it's nice and warm here at least, so I'm still getting a suntan. You know, it's midway through summer, so why not?
Yeah,
cold drinks, barbecues, and sunshine. That's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be 80 here in South Carolina, so it should be.
That is crazy.
Nice.
80.
Nice.
Yeah, February, 80 degrees.
That is nuts.
You'll have to get out. Get out in the sun and get some.
You get a tan. 80.
Yeah, go out for a little drive.
80, yeah, to the top. They got the top. You've been, that's right, because you kind of bought that car like before. Yeah, so this is like the official summer.
Oh, every day that it's nice out, I have the top down. Yep. My dog loves it.
Yeah. I remember when I got mine first convertible, everyone was laughing at me. It'd be like 50 degrees, but the sun was just kind of peeking out. The clouds was like top down.
Every time. I see people that have convertibles still on beautiful days, and I'm like, you don't even deserve that car. Like, that top is up. Why is that top up?
Yeah.
So, live your best life, I guess. So, John, do you want to say hello to everybody?
You want me to do it? No, you know I'm going to butcher every one of these names. You know I am. That's why she did it. I got it. Hello, Tom. Tom out there. Pam is out there. I see Steve Vapes is out there. Addie Tooney is there. Let's see. LabWorks, we know that guy. Michael Redfern's out there. Hello, Michael. Let's see here. Stephen Vapes, Michael, Addie, Tony. I see a Tony in there. It's always good to see a Tony. That's like the good. That's the good Italian. First name right there. Tony. Hey, Tony. Tony. And that's it. That's all I see right now. And I didn't butcher anybody's name. Yeah. I stayed away from the last name parts. Whatever. These people.
You played it smart.
I know my limitations.
So obviously, Kurt, we are so happy to have you on. Every time we have somebody on the show that we haven't had on the show before, we ask them to tell us a little bit about why they got involved in advocacy in the first place. So would you mind sharing your story with us?
It's a long one, but yeah, let's do that.
Right.
I come from a a smoking family. My father comes from a military family. My mom comes from a motor mechanics family. So smoking was just a thing that the family did, And I have a very, very sad history and experience with tobacco, with losing both my parents, and at very, very critical times in my life. And I was also a heavy smoker for 20 years, smoking around 40 cigarettes a day. And when I married my wife, she's a medical specialist. She said that if you continue with this, you're definitely not going to make 50s, and I doubt you'll even make your 40s, your mid 40s. So I was desperate in trying to quit smoking, and just couldn't, absolutely just couldn't quit smoking. And I stumbled across vaping, and within 3 days I had quit. And a lot of people don't quite understand it. Most smokers do. Is that when you do eventually quit, it's almost like a new birth, and an awakening that you're able to achieve this. And I like to compare it to people running marathons or climbing a mountain for that first time. Is that it's such an achievement, and to do it with such ease and such enjoyment is even more so. So while I was still in the corporate world, I then started promoting these products and eventually even selling these products on the sideline, and realized how successful it was amongst my small cohort within my office block. And then the company and myself just didn't think this was such a great idea. So they gave me an ultimatum. I said, well, great, thanks. It's a good idea. And off I went, and opened up a vape shop in my local town, and started trying to help people quit smoking there, which was great, absolutely great. And then in 2017, late 2016, we started getting this bad press and bad communication from, thank you, United States of America, popcorn lung, and all that nonsense. It's just stuff it up for the rest of us. And then my co-founder, Craig, and a lot of people will know Craig. He's the guy behind Obey Robot and Survey and that. We had a chat because now we've formed some kind of friendship. We never knew one another before, but we had a bit of a chat and said, listen, we need to do something because this is just getting a bit out of hand, this. So we then decided to start a small Facebook page called Vaping Saved My Life. And the whole intention behind it was to have ex-smokers, now vapers, upload their testimonials as to why they felt this was such a great product. And then it just went absolute downhill from there, from a capacity point of view, because I just went down the rabbit hole, and I went down the rabbit hole deep. And in 2018, we had the proposed tobacco bill in South Africa, that now included e-cigarettes and was rather draconian in its approach to it. And we started becoming a bit more proactive rather than just reactive to it, and started getting involved. And then in 2019, I was invited to the e-cig summit in the UK, and I bumped into a gentleman that kind of changed my life, and that was Clive Bates. And Clive Bates and myself had a bit of a coffee, and he literally kicked me further down the rabbit hole. And that's pretty much it. It's now, since 2019, been my full-time job or passion. It's not a job. It's something that I live, breathe, and eat. And there we go. I mean, that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, obviously, you guys have done a lot of great work. I mean, you also are writing articles. I just read the article about the disposable vapes that you wrote for the World Vapers Alliance, which I thought was really great. Um, I mean, how do you view the future for, harm reduction, in South Africa, based on what you're dealing with now?
I was just speaking to people this weekend. Is that just nothing makes sense anymore. South
Yeah,
Africa has a very proud history of harm reduction because we're probably the most widespread HIV/AIDS
Right.
epidemic in the world. Even second, or even probably on the same par as India, which is a population of 1 billion people. HIV/AIDS is rough in this country. Tuberculosis is rough. So we've got a lot of very good programs around harm reduction, but there's just doesn't seem to tick when it comes to tobacco harm reduction. So I think we're going to fight as hard as we can, and at the end of the day, I think tobacco harm reduction is going to be a reality around the world. And
yeah,
we're going to have these little outlying countries that are going to be just naturally prohibitionist, uh, um, and they're just following their normal course. But I think we will see that will change. Whether it be vaping, I don't think vaping will ever be the primary tobacco harm reduction in South Africa. It would probably be something, sorry, in the name like snus or pouches, purely
yeah,
from a cost perspective. But I think harm reduction and tobacco harm reduction as a whole is definitely going to be a thing, and it's going to be a thing. I would probably say in the next 5 years, when they finally run out of runway and they've hit the brick wall, and
yeah,
it's getting very close to that now, based on the rhetoric and the measures that they're taking, or the lengths that they're going to try and discredit a lot of things. It's that last, the way I see it, it's that last death kick
yeah.
in the carcass.
I got a quick question for you. How accessible is vaping there in South Africa? Is it? Can I go get gear? Can I go get coils? Can I get e-liquid? You have your shops located all over the place, or is it pretty hard to find a shop?
Well, South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. So we have very, very poor people, and we have super rich, and we virtually have a very small middle class. So the majority of our population are unfortunately very poor. So their access to these products, just from a price point of view, is impossible. So if unfortunately, the legacy of apartheid is you have uh, areas, metropolitan residential areas that were predominantly white, and they were well infrastructured, got good malls, good shopping centers, whatever it is, and you'll find a vape shop in there. Unfortunately, if you go to what we call the locations where predominantly black uh, communities live, you won't find those things. But then again, they're not going to be able to afford it. And we've seen this, for example, like in the fight against HIV and AIDS, is that in the beginning, medication and even things like condoms were just out of the price range of these individuals. And the government would step in and then subsidize it. So, things like ARVs and condoms are subsidized and provided free to those communities. And I'm not saying for any moment that the government should supply vapes to these people. What
No,
I'm
yeah,
thinking is that they let the free market system start to
yeah.
develop and work, so that we can have more and more people in those communities. Because as the World Health Organization has indicated, is that 80% of smokers are found in LMIC countries, and the majority of them are in poorer communities. So that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, is that the smoker is no different to anybody else,
Yeah.
and the smoker's social economic status shouldn't be deemed any different to anyone else. Smokers all suffer from the same diseases and harms eventually in their lives, irrespective of their social economic background or education or anything else. So, it's a common denominator across the entire spectrum of populations.
Yeah, here we're handing condoms out to high school kids by a fistful.
We got actual condom machines or vending machines. It's not even a vending machine. You just stick your hand in and pull something out, and somebody walks around with a bag and empties it.
As far as how much out of price are they? Give us a kind of an idea of what I don't know. Do you guys are you beyond the 15 ml bottles? Are you guys at 30s and 60s there now, or I have no idea. I don't know what you sell.
John, this is Africa. Anything goes.
Okay. So you still have 15 ml bottles then?
Yeah, liter bottles.
we got 120 ml bottles.
Yeah.
We have up to 60 milligram nicotine strength. There's no regulations and no standards.
Okay. So what would it cost to purchase? I don't worry about the hardware part of it, but what would it cost for someone to buy a 60 ml bottle of e-liquid there? And I'm just kind of trying to get.
Can I get you
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, I just kind of want to get a general idea of how out of reach it is for even the middle class person. If it's that crazy, especially if it's more than a pack of cigarettes, which we've seen at a couple places.
So you're looking around $12 to $13 for 60 ml.
Okay. So, but does that reflect the income for that area? No.
Well, once again, in certain communities, it's not even, they don't even break a sweat.
Right.
In other communities, it's incredibly tough. So if we just think about it from a cigarette point of view, the cheapest box of cigarettes, I mean, we're talking about illicit cigarettes in the country. The cheapest box of 20s is 44 cents.
Oh, wow.
Holy shit.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
44 cents
for a box of 20s.
You could be a millionaire in Australia.
You got Paul excited. He's like, I need a career change.
No, because we're watching.
Yeah.
We've got Australia and New Zealand have probably got the highest prices in the world when it comes to cigarettes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Combustibles.
Yep.
A pack of 20 here now is anywhere between 32 and 37 Australian dollars. Okay. 44 cents. And we're wondering why, and we're seeing cigarettes come in from all over the world now. And our illicit market, not only for combustibles, but also for disposables, is completely out of control now. You can thank the government, and I'll say it again. They condoned a black market here. Simply by bringing in the prescription model, that's what they did. They said, hello, people. Yeah. Let's give you a prescription, but guess what? We can't keep up with the amount of product coming into the country. Well, we're an island. You can come in from any angle here and then ship it across the country via a truck. Come on, think about it. They'll never be able to stop it.
No.
Never. No. And that's what I said during our pre-show chat, is that between 54 and 70% of the cigarette market in South Africa is illicit, depending on which study you find. I'm more inclined to look at the Ipsos study because it's more on-the-ground kind of study, whereas the UCT study, which is a university anti-smoking university in South Africa, looks at sales prices, for argument's sake. These things don't go through registers. These things are sold on the corners of pretty much every corner in the country. And if we look at the regular taxed cigarette in South Africa, we're looking at around about, I just calculated it now, sorry. We're looking at $2 for a proper regulated cigarette. but the illicit cigarette is 40 cents for a box of 20s.
That's 90s prices here. 1990.
Yeah.
I when I started, they were 79 cents a pack. That was 1981. So,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
And what would an average device? I know you have to do the how much would
let's just take a look at, for
it's
example,
no good having e-liquid if you don't have something to vape with it.
a Vaporessa 200.
Yeah.
We'd probably be looking at around, for the kit for the device is $50.
But again, yeah, can they afford it? Can they afford it?
No, definitely not when you're paying 44 cents for a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah,
that just looks like it's a luxury instead of a way out of smoking, unfortunately.
That's when your spouse jumps in and goes, "These are only 49 cents."
Yeah.
It's very sad.
It is.
And the reality is that we've never, as a country, focused on smoking. We've always used it as a blunt instrument from a regulations point of view and taxation point of view. And it's never really affected the people, those regulations and those taxations, the people that are in desperate need of regulations. And that includes the people that are in, for example, our locations and that. There's no law enforcement to speak of. Everything is on in some kind of what we call a spaza shop, which is almost like a tuck shop in the middle of the community. So there's no real checks and balances. And the people that are using these products and the people that have to rely on public health and so forth and so on, it's just a vicious cycle, are not the people that get affected by taxes because they're using the illicit products. They're not the people that are affected by the regulations because there's just virtually no law enforcement in those areas. And so they'll be able to smoke wherever they want to smoke. They'll be able to sell it to whoever they want to sell it. And we're starting to see those reflections in the most recent global adult tobacco survey, which was the first in the country, where we see the smoking rate in the youth is the 25% mark. And prior to that, they were all talking about in the lower teens. So that they didn't use proper methods to study the smoking prevalence in the country. And when you start raising these issues in the meetings that we have with government, the defense and the shock and awe from the opposing side is unbelievable. But we have the evidence to say that you didn't actually measure smoking prevalence. You just attached a couple of questions to another survey. So your survey methodologies were all screwed up and all over the place. And then you tried to convince the rest of the world, and you did convincingly for some time, that there's this downward trend and you're doing what you're doing. But then when you actually do a proper study around smoking prevalence, like the GATS, the Global Adult Tobacco Survey, suddenly you see this upturn literally go to I think I calculated around about the 1998 levels again, literally in a couple of years, because you're now measuring it correctly.
Wow.
Governments sure do love to do that.
A question, Kurt.
Yeah.
What's the average smoking age in South Africa now? And do you have a serious problem with youth, like both illicit cigarettes, vaping, all of that? Do you have that problem, the same as what we've got here now, because of regulation or misregulation, I should say?
I don't think we didn't have a problem. We just didn't measure it correctly. So they, the problem is that the ants and the government were using methods in order to measure these incorrectly. There was no consistent way of measuring, like we see in the National Youth Tobacco Survey in the United States. The last time we did a global youth tobacco survey in South Africa was in 2011. We haven't measured it since.
Whoa.
And all the adult surveys have always been almost like I would do us a favor, just add, are you a smoker, and how many cigarettes do you smoke to your survey, and then we'll use those studies and then publish them to the World Health Organization and say, look, World Health Organization, we're working and doing this properly, and it's coming down. And then suddenly, the only good thing that Bloomberg has done for us is to pay for the Global Adult Tobacco Survey. And in that, we saw how many people in South Africa are actual smokers and their ages. And more importantly, what are they smoking? And they're smoking illicit cigarettes. And this now literally became a hot poker in the chest for our government as well as our anti-groups, is that not only are we seeing that smoking didn't decline, smoking has literally climbed, and we also seeing that they are using illicit cigarettes. And at the same time, although we were one of the very first signatories of the FCTC in 2005, we haven't implemented Article 14, which talks about cessation support for smokers, and we haven't implemented Article 15, which is talking about illicit. And both of those are direct points at failure in the entire tobacco thing. But in true form, we go for the blunt object rather than rational thought. You know, how are if you don't have an enforcement power or have enforcement teams to combat the illicit thing, what other strategies can you put in place? And it might sound very weird to a lot of people, but how do you compete against an illicit trade? You make your regular products cost effective for people to switch. You know, if you can't afford to enforce the law, then you have to think of other ways to do so. And the same thing applies to helping support smokers. If you can't afford to offer that support, then you allow other people to offer that. And one of those happens to be tobacco harm reduction. Allow them to do it for you.
Yeah. That would be too sensible. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. So you guys are basically just like, you can do whatever you want, but you're stuck in a really bad spot because you're stuck in an illicit market where people are not being protected. I mean, as protected as they can be when they're buying a pack of cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be interested now, because we're in a COP year, what is actually going to be brought up regarding South Africa or Africa as a whole, and some of the things that are going to be discussed. Because if you haven't implemented any of these measures yet, being a signatory to the FCTC, that's really interesting. Yet, I think Bloomberg and his funding and the rest of the cronies, they're actually doing a lot more damage as well to your community by not allowing, you know, safer alternatives to be brought in and be made cost effective. That'd be a much smarter move for any of those guys to do. But you know, that's never going to happen, not on our watch. Maybe, you know, one day when we're old and decrepit, but hopefully they change what is actually happening in South Africa. I've got friends there that they're modders. And I know Obey Robot and people like that, Bit of Viking Customs.
Yeah.
People like that I know. And because I'm also very good friends with Sam Bogan, he's been to South Africa a couple of times now for expos. He said the same thing. It's quite horrifying to see such disparity across the whole community. You've got ultra rich, ultra poor, people in between, but the problem with the people in between, they're not being educated the right way. They're being told one thing, but still going and buying a cheap packet of cigarettes on the corner.
Well, yes, it's literally the vaping is the Chinese balloon of the antis. You know, don't look here. You know, look at that. That's more dangerous. You know, that's the issue you need to be watching for. And it just shows because if they were open about it, it would just show how inept and how, for lack of a better word, useless they have been for decades now, absolute decades.
So is there an anti-vaping campaigns there in South? There are lots. So you seeing billboards, you're seeing news ads, you're
Oh
seeing.
man,
Yeah.
Is
We got, yeah, and they're all government taught. And
okay?
they're all,
That was my next question.
and they're funded by Bloomberg. So yeah, that's
Oh, you said the B word twice.
Hot.
yeah.
He's listening. He's listening.
Say it one more time, you
It's-
might show up in the room.
Yeah, you say it one more
Oh,
time, he's
no.
gonna turn into Beetlejuice.
Happy birthday,
no.
Mikey. Happy birthday, Mikey.
God.
that's funny. The other thing I want to know is how approachable is the government in South Africa now when you want to go and talk to them, or is it just
No.
we don't want to talk to you?
No.
Same as here, I suppose.
No, you guys are small fry. So the bill was proposed in 2018. It's only now reached our parliament for the parliamentary process, and they basically have lied and told big long fibs about the process that they followed and so forth. So think about it. 2018, the bill was proposed. We then had 90 days for public commentary on the bill, and
Yep.
it went quiet until the end of 2022 when it was submitted to Parliament. And part of their rationale, or not rationale, part of their brief when they submitted into Parliament was said there was extensive consultation with the industry and with stakeholders and so forth. We had 4 hours since 2018. We've
What?
had 4 hours. And that was literally 15 minutes per stakeholder. And it was spread over 2 days because they had to put it during Eid, the Islamic holiday. So we then forced them to move it to another day so at least we could have our Muslim community involved as well. So 4 hours in total, 15 minutes per stakeholder to share their thoughts. That's the level of consultation that they've allowed us.
I don't think we've actually got that with our government yet. All our aunties, they go and sit down and have cups of tea for 4-hour afternoons and create a policy that they've never even spoke to the stakeholders. They've never spoken to liquid manufacturers. They've never spoken to developers, never spoken to hardware manufacturers, never even tried to sit down with us.
Yeah.
Why?
Paul's going to hate me for bringing this up again, but again, we're talking about a continent that is pretty much, is it still under British is it still a Commonwealth?
Where? Australia?
South Africa.
Well, we're part of the Commonwealth, yeah.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
Again, the same
Yes.
situation as Australia, which I still, for the life of me, do not understand how they're not accepting what the hell is going on in England, in South Africa, and Australia. And it's the same companies. I mean, it's British American Tobacco Company, which is pretty prevalent there in South Africa, correct?
That's correct. But I mean, remember that the Commonwealth thing is just for a thing of
It's just for
convenience.
looks. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it is now.
You know, Australia, I can't speak for Australia, but in South Africa, colonialism was a big
And then
big
I'll say
problem.
this to you, Kurt. Who's on your money?
Sorry?
Who's on your money?
Who's on my money? What does that refer to?
Who's the picture on your money?
Oh, the picture on my money. Oh, I don't know. I don't carry cash.
Nobody carries cash anymore. It just says Visa.
No, that would probably Nelson Mandela would be on a picture, would be the picture, and on the other side would be part of our wildlife. So no, we don't have the Queen there or the King. We haven't had that for some time.
Okay.
But carrying cash in South Africa is a bit of a
It's pretty dangerous.
sentence.
Yeah, that just to me, I really don't understand how that all works. I wish I need to sit down and do a little bit of reading, but I really just don't get how England is just sitting there saying to themselves, "This is working. Why don't we push Australia? Why don't we push South Africa into doing this?" and show them our results, show them how many people's lives we were saving, show them how our medical our medical bills or whatever you want to call it have come down in for them and saving them money. I just don't get why England hasn't stepped in at any point in time and said, hey, you know what, you guys really need to look into this. Fuck Bloomberg. Stop listening to fucking Bloomberg. And here's our results. Here's our statistics. This is working here in England. People are quitting smoking, and I don't understand what it's going to take.
Well, I don't believe it's their job to do so. I believe that the World Health Organization and the likes of the FDA and the CDC, it's their job to communicate and provide that information. It's not for the UK. And the same thing, we could ask the same thing for Sweden, and we could ask the same thing for New Zealand. It's not their job. The rest of the world and the world as it is, and you guys live in America and we live in the rest of the world, is that we're controlled pretty much by this multinational, unelected body of bureaucrats,
the World
Bank, World Health Organization, all of those guys. I mean, to be honest, the United States, I don't know about now, but in the past was pretty much an FU to the rest of the world. We do it our way. And that's a big part of the US success. But unfortunately, in places like Africa, the reliance on the World Bank, the World Health Organization, and a whole host of these multinational, international bodies is pervasive. And a lot of the things is a revolving door into these organizations for politicians in these countries, because it's such a fluid political environment in Africa. So if you are towing the line for a multinational, international body, you almost secured some kind of consultancy job into those organizations, and then that's your retirement plan. So they're never going to rock the boat. They're never going to do it. So it has to come from the top down. And I think the UK is doing a good enough job to present their data. They're doing a good enough job to show the way it should be done. It's those guys, if they really do care in the way they say they care, would then look at them and say, okay, they're not perfect. We now seen that the UK has a big disposable issue, but they're working on it. They're doing something about it. They're not running and blaming tobacco companies and blaming parents and blaming everything. They're working on it and putting things in place to make sure that they can reduce it. So they are the poster child, but they don't have to be attack the World Health Organization or Bloomberg or anything like that. It's the World Health Organization, which we now know is captured, to look and say, hang on, what is the best model and how do we put those models in other areas? Because the UK model won't necessarily work in South Africa, but a lot of it can. And it then creates creative juices to be innovative, like we said around HIV and AIDS, is that we start looking at ways that meet our society and then have partnerships with commercial entities to reduce prices and access, and as well as work on standards of these products.
Yeah, I mean, it would, especially in the poorer section of South Africa or Africa in general, just being able to walk into a hospital and be able to get a free device and free e-liquids and keep the poor people away from continuing on that road of smoking, and not just jeopardizing their lives and their families, but putting food on the table shouldn't have to make a decision on to save your life or put food on your table. That decision shouldn't have to be made. It's sad. It's sad. I don't.
That decision's being made every day here by people, especially like lower socioeconomic, where the smoking rate here in Australia now, we're gauging it around 16%, but in the lower socioeconomic, we're gauging it at around 22%. And in the Aboriginal community, it's 30 to 40%. And a lot of the stubborn pricks that won't even look at vaping or any harm reduction option, like the older people here in Australia that are still smoking, 50, 60 cigarettes a day that are retired and using their retirement fund to support their habit, I can't deal with that. That's not a pretty thing. And when you go and see a person at a supermarket go and buy cigarettes here in Australia, 2 packets, because we've got them all the way up to like 50 cigarettes in a packet here, and they're spending $75, $80 on a packet of cigarettes like that. Now they're buying 2 at a time. Now if they're on a pension, that's half of your pension money for the week gone. Thanks for coming. And that's 2 packets of cigarettes that might last them a couple of days.
Yeah.
We're gauging now, and what we're seeing, the illicit tobacco market has skyrocketed from where it was 5 years ago to now, and also the disposable market. Yet you'll see anyone that's over the age of, say, 22, 23, that were a tobacco smoker that switched to vaping. They started on disposables, but now they've got very cool little devices. One of the ones I see now a lot with like older people, they're still in their 20s, but it's a Nautilus Prime by Aspire, where you can actually change. It's got a pod system that can be refilled. They like this device. It's small, it fits in your hand, and it goes in your pocket. Not a problem. But
That's
Kurt,
all right,
I take my hat off to you for what you guys are doing over there in Africa on a whole. But we've got the same problems here, man.
Yeah.
You and I are going to have to butt heads a couple of times and figure a few things out.
Sit down, have a couple gold beers.
No, because there's a lot of comparison between the two countries. A lot. They got 4 hours. We got 0 hours.
Yeah.
We need to find a way to get 4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take 4 hours at first. I will take that, but I want more.
Right.
I want to be able to sit down with the health ministers of each state and say, listen, you're being told a bunch of porcupines. You need to learn. This is a pathway out, not in. Today, I saw Emily Banks being interviewed on a UK talk show, and I'm going, you have to be kidding me.
Yeah.
What you are saying is complete and utter lies.
Yeah.
And they're getting away with it. We've got this other muppet here right now, like Sandro, the TV doctor, TV doctor Sandro, right? Right? No, I'm going to call him a muppet, and I don't care. Come at me, Sandro, because I've got more knowledge in my pinky than what you've got in your whole fucking career. I'm sorry, but you do not understand.
John, I told you Australia has dangerous creatures.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is the people we need to worry. And no, Dean, he brought that up, Dean, and like Kurt said, they know there's a problem and they're fixing it, and they're at least getting an opportunity to fix it.
They're not just banning everything; they're actually working on a solution.
Yeah, they're not going to the extreme and saying "fuck it," we're just going to ban everything. No, they're going to try to find a solution and try to fix it, and that's
why is everyone trying to put a band-aid on a situation in the rest of the world?
Band-aids are cheaper.
Yeah, all right, not a problem.
And plus, the Band-aids come from Johnson & Johnson, so you're kind of feeding the old evil one there.
I
do understand that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a band-aid. They just want to amputate.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to do, is just amputate it. The only reason why we got 4 hours, Paul, is because we have a constitution, and they have to tick that box. Whether they listen is a different story. So it's a 4 hours are wasted. And we, particularly myself, came with some very hard facts. Which, and when we were talking about the excise tax in November, I came in with some very hard facts, and in my true fashion, started calling out names and highlighting some indiscrepancies and so forth. and there was a huge offence taken, in that meeting, massive offence taken by our local professors that had published these reports. And when I highlight the flaws in their own study in front of everybody, it became rather
They don't like
personal.
Yeah.
Rather personal. So, but it was all about a box ticking exercise. That 4 hours was a complete and utter waste of time because they weren't listening. They were just making sure that they have a recording that it was done.
Yeah.
But we suspect in March that it's going to go to our portfolio committee on health, where they will open up for submissions, and that we'll take that opportunity with both hands, run with it, and make sure that everything is primed for if there is a decision going against the science and against the evidence, that it be ventilated in a court of law.
Oh.
And that is pretty much how a lot of the South African laws are getting resolved, is because we have what I call a kakistocracy, is that we have incredibly incompetent individuals in our decision-making areas that are just don't have the benefit of I'm trying to choose my words here.
You can say whatever you want.
Understanding what the real scenario is. South Africa is an incredibly corrupt environment, and unfortunately, it's not just the tobacco bill. We've seen a lot of South African laws being ventilated in the court for the same very reasons. And it now just becomes a costly exercise, and almost all of them get resolved in court in the way that it should have been resolved. It should have been decided. So we're just going to keep coming with facts and figures and do what we have to do.
That tax was pretty extreme, if I remember. It was like 140%.
So it depends on the size of it. So we're looking anywhere between 116 to 130%, depending on the liquid volume. But, this is what I said, is that it actually, nothing makes sense because they're charging R2.90 per mil. The reason that to justify this is to protect the youth.
Right.
But the youth uses a disposable, and the disposable is anywhere from 2 to 4 mils. So that effectively means an extra R5.80 for a disposable, and that's not going to.
It's not going
to move the needle. It's not going to move the needle.
I laugh because when I see these tax rates, I think that's what draws the non-smoker or the person that's not concerned with it whatsoever, because they see these huge numbers and they automatically assume there must be a really big problem here. This must be out of control for them to go to this extreme. And I think that draws in those non-smokers and those people that could give a shit what you're doing, but they just see that number and it's just like, wow, maybe we should look into this. And then, of course, now they get fed the misinformation because where do they go? Facebook. They go to their,
or the FDA's website.
FDA, CDC's website, Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Another question for you, Kurt. We spoke before the show that there's PMI, BAT, JTI in South Africa or in Africa itself. And then you were saying about local manufacturers of tobacco or growers. How much influence do the local manufacturers have on the government and what they do and how they play the game?
I don't think they have any influence, but that really doesn't matter because the majority of those products are illicit products anyway. So we have laws that are in paper, but we have no way of enforcing them. So if we look at the murder rate in South Africa, if we look at the rape rate in South Africa, if we look at a whole host of things, just crime in general, if we look at the education levels, if we look at the national health situation, we've got fantastic laws on paper, absolutely beautiful things. I mean, wonderful literature to read. and it's all in the same realm as J.R.R. Tolkien, or it's
Yeah.
just unbelievably fantastical, and wow, what a panacea! But on the ground,
It's not enforced.
Wow.
it's
No, that
it's just a John Wick movie.
Yeah.
that is the best explanation I've heard yet, because Kurt, I used to work in the horse racing industry, and I've visited South Africa a few times. Turftain, I ran horses there, and a couple of the other tracks over there, and it was quite strange, because I'd have to have a security guard with me to take me. I was a photographer, and I had a security guard with me the whole time. It was the weirdest thing ever. Yeah, every other country around the world that I photographed at, or like had horses, never that problem.
Did you buy him
And
lunch? Did you buy him lunch at least?
what? Buy them lunch?
You didn't buy him lunch? What the fuck, Paul? You guys
Man.
following you around all day. You didn't even buy him lunch.
I didn't have to buy him lunch. It was part of the contract of who I was shooting
I'm
for at the
just
time.
kidding you.
But that is the best analogy of South African law I've ever heard. It's like a Tolkien book.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to use that. And by the way, when March rolls around, I'm going to do a GoFundMe. I'm just going to come over there and sit in Parliament with you and fuck shit up, because that's what I like to do. That's what I like to do. I think it'd be fun, actually, to go and sit there and listen to the rhetoric and go, well, hang on a second. This needs to be cut up into slices and then put out to the world to show how stupid exactly what is going on in all the different countries. It'd be so fun to do that just in slices.
I don't know. Paul can answer that, but I'm kind of curious as far as regulations there in the shops. Are there any? Do they have to register with anyone, with the government, to open up a vape shop, or nothing? Huh? Well, son of a bitch.
So let me just be very, very fair. Is that obviously, in order to open up a business, you have to do some kind of paperwork and register and so forth. From a vape shop, there's no standards, there's no regulation, there's no taxes apart from our VAT and corporate tax. However, the vape industry, since the longest time, has tried to self-regulate themselves. So, and that includes things like making sure that the bottles are child-proof, making sure that we have things like nicotine warnings and age restriction on the bottles, making sure that we don't sell. It doesn't apply to all shops, because this is the real world. We do have bad actors, and we have people that cut corners.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of us out there that try to highlight that the importance of having these things to self-regulate, because believe it or not, most vapors and most vape shop owners are ex-smokers and they're family people, and they know that they don't want their kids to be hooked on nicotine or to be involved in any other risky behavior. So they do spend a lot of time trying to self-regulate and do the right thing. But like we saw in 2020, where they banned the sale of tobacco and e-cigarette products during the COVID lockdowns, the whole thing, all the wheels came off, and it was a free-for-all, and it forced people to become criminals. And literally, overnight, we were a community of individuals trying to assist and just eke out our living, to becoming criminals overnight.
And is this is the one that I was looking at? This is the one you guys are talking about that they're trying to implement with this new law, correct?
Yeah.
A tracking and tracing system with unique identification. I mean, that's what we have here.
Batch numbers,
Batch numbers.
Yeah, but you can go one step further with that. You can actually put a marker in the liquid who manufactured it. It's a chemical
Yeah, you
marker.
talked about that, right? Yeah, Paul.
It's a chemical marker that you can put in there. It won't hurt anyone. It's used in a lot of manufactured pharmaceuticals, and you use the same technology. You could throw a marker in each liquid. They test it. It comes up on a mass spec. Bang! You know who manufactured it.
Let me just put this into perspective. currently South Africa doesn't have electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we, on average, have no electricity between 4 to 6 hours every day.
What?
And we don't even have the ability to keep the lights on. So I don't know what they're going to have to do in order to track or trace anything.
Yeah.
If we,
Yeah, I'm curious.
when, you know,
They got
I
lost
saw
in the
this-
cloud, Kurt. It got lost in the cloud.
I saw this a while back, and I thought, hang on a second. And I think you might have been on a conversation once with myself, Nancy, Lucas, Clive, and a few of the others through CAFRA, but we looked at packaging, we looked at even manufacturing certain products in South Africa, and it wouldn't happen because of the electricity. Like the labs, you need to have them running 24/7 with electricity, otherwise it doesn't work, right? That's how labs set up. But import export, I still don't understand, what I could do to try and help you guys over there. It's strange.
And that's the general essence that I'm trying to bring across, is that nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing makes sense, from the regulation, from the taxation, from even the science. Just nothing really ever makes sense.
So what this says, so like a bottle of e-liquid just says how many pulls you can have out of a bottle. How do they know how many pulls you can have? Or is that just, are they talking about the disposables in general?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was brought up during these discussions is that the disposables were measured on puffs and not necessarily milliliters, and the open tanks are obviously on milliliters. So the whole tax structure is purely based around mils. And what was highlighted is going to be incredibly challenging and an administrative nightmare for the revenue services to do their job purely based around the tax. And it's all on the backdrop of not even having a standard. So, we don't even have standards. So we can't even say this is the size of the bottle that is authorized. So the issue is that if we look at a typical e-liquid, it's a liquid. And that's what we saw in the lockdowns, is when prohibited sale. Transporting a liquid is an incredibly easy way to do things. How do you identify that as being an e-liquid?
Yeah, correct.
And not hand sanitizer, or not
lube,
or lube, or anything. People were transporting these things in the weirdest possible way, and when we were stopped or whatever, they would say, "Well, no, it's hand sanitizer, or it's oil for my sewing machine." It's and unfortunately, we don't have a police force that are highly educated. They don't go through degrees. They don't go through extra training. They have literally 6 to 8 weeks at a police college, get given a gun and say, off you go, fight crime. And
don't get shot.
So how do you enforce these things? Because effectively what's going to happen now is that you're going to spend more time or more money on enforcing something that is relatively harmless when it's compared to everything else in South Africa that would kill you. I mean, the fact that we don't have electricity, you probably die from falling down a flight of stairs before you'll die from vaping. So, we don't even have traffic lights anymore because we don't even have electricity. So we'll have car accidents. But, you're putting in these very strange laws just so that you can tick a box with the World Health Organization to secure your retirement plan when you decide to leave the Department of Health or to leave an anti-NGO. Just because you tick those boxes, and there's no realistic or real world solutions in any of these. That I think a lot of them think, well, we're going to generate tax and so forth. You're not going to, because there's no way you're going to be able to track and trace anybody. It's sure that it's easy to track and trace a Voos or a British American tobacco because they've got this massive plant in the countryside that holds their devices and manufactures the cigarettes and so forth. That's very easy. But how are you going to track and trace a small manufacturer that's literally converted their garage in their house to a lab and created it, started creating e-liquid at very high standards and great quality? You just don't have the numbers of enforcement to do so.
Yeah.
They don't understand the landscape at all. They really don't.
I'm curious. I'm curious now with the tobacco companies that are there. PMI especially with what they're doing and the way they're moving away from combustibles into like different forms of tobacco harm reduction. Do you think you'll see PMI over the next few years convert their facility? What the? Okay.
That was my bad.
Do you think that PMI might start retrofitting their facility over there to help with tobacco harm reduction or not? Or are they just going to keep...
I don't think there'll be any investment of that nature in South Africa purely because we don't have the electricity. We don't. So it makes no sense for any multinational company or even some local companies to invest in any development or growth purely because of the risk of having no electricity. Everything's gone to an absolute standstill in terms and that affects the jobs. So we have incredibly high unemployment. I was just looking at the stat now, is that half of the South African population are on social grants.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
50%?
Yeah, so 29 million South Africans are out of 60 million are on social grants.
Holy shit.
So it's, there's nothing good about the story.
God bless America.
Absolutely.
We go fucking crazy when the power goes off for a half hour here. I can just imagine for 6 hours, it would be chaos. There'd be fires in the streets. There'd be
pretty much the entire January was 10 to 12 hours a day of no electricity.
No way.
No. And then we don't have, and then with that, because we don't have electricity, we started running out of water because we can't pump water.
You can't pump water.
So all basic human rights have been literally destroyed, decimated purely because we don't have electricity. And it's this very same people that are wanting to pass these tobacco laws in South Africa are the same people that are responsible for the crisis we're finding ourselves around electricity. And the ripple effect is immense. So getting back to the comment, I don't believe BAT or Philip Morris or anybody else would invest any cent, 1 cent, into migrating or developing. They'll import it, but they certainly won't convert.
I'm curious now. So they wouldn't invest in like wind farms, solar, anything like that?
I was going to say the same thing. Where's the hydro plants? You guys have lots of water flowing over there.
No, South Africa is a water scarce country. Far from very water scarce.
Far from.
The issue is that, according to, once again, South African law is that power generation was the domain of the state. They were the only ones that could generate power. So it was only very recently where they have relaxed, for example, even solar generation for to a certain degree. So you could install a solar at your house, but you certainly couldn't install solar at a mass scale. So they've now just relaxed those laws. But then again, that requires investment and time. And a whole bunch of red tape and bureaucracy to navigate through in order for these. And at the end of the day, it's about a return of investment. Is there going to be a return? So if we take, for example, a company like BAT, what would it take and for them to now convert the entire facility to renewable energy with solar. What does that mean? Because they're not going to operate. They're going to operate 24/7 because they supply pretty much most of Africa from this location, or most of sub-Saharan Africa from this location. What would it take to do that? So there's a lot of big questions being asked, not just from a tobacco industry point of view, but from industry in general in South Africa.
Yeah.
Is that if you think about South Africa's biggest money spinner since the beginning of time,
And power just went out in South Africa.
Don't you fucking dare.
since the beginning of the country.
There, no, he's back.
Okay,
He's
you're
back.
back. I've got to admit. So the question is what would it take? And the mining industry was the big one, and now agriculture is another big one. How much would it cost in order to put these things together? And a lot of very hard decisions are being made now. So
I guess you have a lot of other problems than vaping to be concerned with. Yeah, there's no
South
other.
Africa,
There's
South
no
Africa's an amazing country, though, dude.
Yeah,
Amazing.
No.
The food there is off the hook, right? It's a fusion of all these different like flavors and spices. When I was there, the food, that's what got me about the place and the landscape.
that's the most beautiful country in the world by far. Yeah.
Oh well, I'll go.
Paul's going to argue with you. He's going to say Australia.
I'll go head to head with Australia, but everything here will kill you. No, don't worry about it.
I thought you would either say Australia or New Zealand. New Zealand's pretty beautiful too.
Yeah, I think we do have different landscapes. We have tropics, we have deserts, we have mountains, and
I like Southern California.
We have things that will kill you. Yeah, it's
I know.
and it's not just the animals.
No, it's a regular Joe Schmo that'll kill you over in Africa. That's not a problem. But
the biggest killer in the world from animals is obviously malaria and the mosquito.
Yeah, malaria.
Yeah, we were riddled with Anopheles mosquitoes in South Africa.
Dead.
So, we might not have the most poisonous things in the world, but we certainly have things that like to eat people.
Yeah, I mean.
I know. That's the cool part.
Yeah. Now, has any outside manufacturers or companies, either from China or the U.S., want to come in and step in and kind of help out? Have you gotten any of that from, say, any of the manufacturers here in the U.S. or, God forsaken, China?
The market's too small to justify that in South Africa. It would pretty much be a charity case. And I think, United States is facing their own demons.
Yes.
And they're fighting for their own survival. And it's just very sad to see how, I was watching Clarkson's Farm last night, and he's portrayed it perfectly, the amount of bureaucracy and nonsensical approach to dealing with situations. And he's taken it from a perspective of farming and how farmers are under the cosh when it comes to what's happening with Brexit and what's happening with the Ukraine situation and so forth. And the farmers have really been affected. But then we have these pencil pushers at the local council and how they stand in the way of progress or having people just do what they need to do. So the same thing applies to the discussions that we have around tobacco harm reduction in all parts of the world. And it's not about realism or what's happening on the ground. It's about somebody having a preconceived notion of what's happening. And I think the ants have done a fantastic job by portraying this as just being a profit thing. Big tobacco is just trying to gain more support and so forth. But isn't that the point of having a free market society? Right. Isn't that about creating opportunities and employment and development and innovation? Is that this is all driven by profit. And I'm terribly sorry. The fact that we have this contradiction is that these ants are also in it for profit. They're also making
Right.
huge bucks out of
Yep.
grants and so forth. So there's this hypocrisy that's happening around here. But they've done a great job purely because big tobacco has such a poor reputation.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of answers, a lot of questions to answer.
And Bloomberg has lots of money and he's got an honest face.
On
That's
honest face.
Well, you know where I'm getting at.
Oh,
You know
he's
where I'm
small.
going.
He's small.
He's
a
small. He's
He's a little
compact. He's
threatening.
little.
He's a little
He's not
guy.
going to hurt anybody
He doesn't look like a threat. He's old. I mean, but he's
Yeah,
got
all right.
billions.
Yeah,
until he
all
Put it
drops
right.
this
his
way.
wallet on your foot.
Yeah, put it this
Yeah,
way.
I know.
Bloomberg is putting a lot of food on the Aints table. Let's put it that way.
Buying a lot of wine for those pig moms.
Yeah.
We have terminology for Bloomberg here in Australia, and he actually has a jockey syndrome, the small person syndrome.
Yeah.
Right?
Little man syndrome.
No, jockey syndrome.
No.
Like, these,
No.
and trust me, the next couple of years, and this year especially, moving into COP10, this is where it's going to be very interesting because there's one topic that's on the agenda: new and emerging technologies. And this is where he's going to choke.
Steve, Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll pay that one.
Yeah,
But
second that.
But Kurt, you're up to date, the same as I am with FCTC and what's going on COP10 this year. The new and novel emerging technologies are going to be a very interesting topic. Are you going to be in Panama this year? Oh well,
No.
well,
Not that I
might
can
have.
think of,
Well, we might have to figure out how to get you there, because we're going to have a little bit of a war room, and anyone that comes out of the COP hearings, we're going to try and grab them and interview them live, and we're going to have a bit of fun. All right, we're just going to grill them.
I'm not
you know,
bailing
like
you
a-
out again, Paul.
Like a toasted... No, it's going to be a fucking toasted cheese sandwich. And I'm just going to... Anyone that comes my way, I'm just going to grill them like we do here. But this is going to be... I want to know what just went down. And if they can't talk about it, guess what? We will have someone inside the room. We know that for a fact. We're going to have someone inside the room this year. And hopefully... if we get things right, we'll get a few very good interviews. It's hard that under what we look after, or tobacco harm reduction, that we're not allowed as either consumers, manufacturers, or harm reduction specialists, we're not allowed to have a seat at the table.
I
That
think
sucks.
my view of FCTC and COP10 and COP is that, again, it looks all fantastic on paper, but very few countries around the world have the ability to implement anything, particularly in the lower middle income countries. They're very difficult to implement any of those things. And it never actually talks about what's happening on the ground. And one of the principles around public health is meet people where they are. And they can sit there in their suits and drink on their fancy spring water or mineral water. But the reality is whatever they're discussing there actually doesn't really materialize, purely because there's so many other challenges that these countries face. So, and eventually reality does catch up. So I understand that you want to fight against the World Health Organization and the FCTC, that they have this, that they're sending out, all that they're really effectively doing is sending out the wrong information. They're not really affecting any change if you consider how many smokers there were at 2005 in these countries, and how many smokers there are currently. There's been no change. So whatever they've done and discussed and whatever what they implemented, if you just go through with a fine tooth comb, I'm sure you have, Paul, and look at how many of those countries have actually implemented any of those things. We have countries like the UK that have implemented it completely. We have countries like Australia that's implemented a lot of these things. But that doesn't really make a dent to the smoking prevalence of the world because 80% of the world smokers are in LMRCs that don't have the ability to implement any of these things. So yes, for example, South Africa says that you can't advertise tobacco. So they didn't advertise tobacco. Smoking rates went up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't sell it to under 18s. That law's been with us since 2008. Smoking in that cohort has gone up. So there's no way of them implementing these things. That's once again, it goes back to that piece of paper. It looks absolutely brilliant, beautifully
Yeah.
written, wonderful fonts used, lovely graphics.
No pictures. No pictures.
Slap it into a hardcover and sell it on Amazon.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Fantastic
Yeah.
read. It doesn't reflect the reality.
Yeah. So how hard do you think it will be to actually implement regulations in South Africa? Do you think that will ever be a reality?
I think implementing regulations is something that they'll try to push through. Once again, enforcing it is a whole different ballgame.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately, we've missed the boat around the taxation kind of thing. We'll continue talking about it because one of the good things is that kind of discussion happens every single year. So we'll just keep biting at
Doing
it
the same. Yeah.
and doing the same thing over again. But in terms of the actual bill, if that gets passed and it hasn't been challenged, that can take anywhere up to 15 years to reverse. And by that time, it's
Wow.
decimated everything. So a lot of our focus, a lot of my focus is around the bill itself because there's a lot of things in there that are incredibly, and draconian. What we're seeing now is a lot of people are thinking, hang on, not only because we're having the situation around our electricity and our infrastructure, but a lot of people saying, why are we so focused on this? Why has this become such a big talking point? Why is this something that we need now? Especially if we're talking about things around jobs and employment and talking about having half the population on grants. We need to find jobs. We need to make sure that people are given opportunities. We need to start focusing on small, medium enterprises like vape shops, like anything else, and start stimulating the small, medium enterprise economies in South Africa so that we can start removing this massive burden of unemployment and so forth and so on. So a lot of these people are now saying, but none of this actually feeds into a bigger picture of the success or the wanted success in South Africa. So I think reality is starting to kick in. Is that yes, we understand smoking is incredibly bad, but how bad is it compared to not being able to boil water for drinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
How bad is it? How bad is it that you not be able to have your kids go to school because you just don't have
The resources. Yeah.
resources? I mean, we have a country that kids don't even actually have proper sanitation at school. They have pit toilets. So, great. You keep writing these fantastic laws, but it doesn't actually. I think a lot of the society is now looking at it and saying, but how does this fit into the bigger picture? How are we getting to, you're talking about employment and jobs, creating jobs and securing small businesses and making sure that they don't get damaged or hurt even further after COVID-19 and so forth.
Yeah.
And now you're introducing these other laws that are designed it doesn't take a rocket science that will destroy small businesses. And it's not just the tobacco bill. There's a whole host of other bills.
Yeah.
I was looking at our government gazette, the amount of bills that are trying to pass. And if you just go through them, you realize who's actually writing these things.
Yeah.
I was about to say a student that's just come out of high school, Some of
No,
them don't even make sense.
it's not even that. It's like someone's just literally found the Control C, Control V on their keyboard. You know,
No, that's too easy. I mean, do you have any leadership there that is pro vaping, that are trying to support you and doing the best they can?
I think that they have a lot of challenges. As I said, our political opposition, our official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, they think they got a lot on their plate in terms of dealing with
Yeah.
the real big issues in the country. But one of their what we call the shadow minister of health in that party has come back and said this makes no sense at all. There's a lot of things within the current bill that are unconstitutional. There's a lot of
Yep.
things in the bill that are that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And we're looking forward to having those people in the Committee of Health to raise those questions. And they've come back and said that they would literally take the bill line by line and apply some really hard questions to every single line and request that it's backed by some kind of data. And fortunately, part of South Africa's law and constitution is that it has to be backed by data. It has to be backed by evidence. It cannot just be there for the sake of being there. There has to be some kind of evidence. And that's what we've been calling for years now, is that South Africa hasn't gathered data. We cannot, if you know, you can't say, well, according to the CDC or according to the FDA or according to the World Health
Right,
Organization,
right.
and not accept the Royal College of Physicians, and not accept Cochrane, and not accept National Academy of Sciences, and not accept any of the others. You can't have it, your cake and eat it. So,
Yeah.
in order for you to answer these questions, you have to find your own evidence, you do your own surveys, do your own studies in South Africa. Because if you're not going to accept if you're not going to accept Cochrane or the RCP or the National Academy of Science, then you shouldn't be able to accept CDC or FDA or the World Health Organization. You should then make your own science. Or wrong choice of words. You should then.
They've been doing that for quite some time.
You should then conduct your own science and have that analyzed. And there's no money for that. So, I think I'm looking forward to seeing some of these opposition parties pick apart this bill and make some recommendations around it. And we'll be there to highlight those. We'll be there to highlight them.
And I agree with what you're saying, because we've got exactly the same problem here. They won't accept the science. And
no, they won't accept science from certain parts, but they will accept science from other parts.
They're not accepting science pretty much from any part here in Australia at the moment. They have their blinkers on. They're looking down the track and going, no, we only see this, you know.
But what's formulating that opinion, Paul?
What's formulating? Misrepresentation at the government level, and people that are now health ministers or were health ministers under the previous government that still will not listen or read the science that is actually out there. They've completely thrown the Royal College under the bus here in Australia. They don't listen to it. They've not read that whole report. Cochrane, really? We bring Cochrane up, and it's like, you got to be kidding. These are real scientists that have done the work, done the hard yards, but they won't accept it. Why? Who's telling them not to accept what they can read and what is true science?
Simon is. Simon says.
Simon.
Oh, that's a dirty word here. Don't.
I tell you, we need to get it. We need to get that. We need to get Paul an Apple Watch so we can check his blood pressure during the show.
Heart rate is
His heart rate.
No, please don't. You know, that dinosaur needs to be put out to pasture, and that's about the size of it. All right.
You see, the issue. A lot of this issue is about it's positional power, and I'm dead set against positional power.
So am I.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the discussion is based around, as Dr. Morena Glover said, is about these celebrity doctors and these.
No.
It's about celebrity doctors. It's about people that have now got positional power based around their historical status and what the work they've done. So unfortunately, those are the people that have the ears. They've been in the system for some time. But I think if we look back at what a number of very wise individuals have said, is that this is going to change. The reality kicks in eventually. And when that does kick in, we start to see these changes. And I think we're seeing these green shoots appearing now, because reality is kicking in, that these people have been telling us for parts. And it's not, once again, it's not just happening on the tobacco front or the tobacco harm reduction front. We're starting to see these things around, for example, the lockdowns, how successful they were. We're starting to see these things around questions around the efficacy of the vaccine and so forth. So a lot of the people that were pushing these things had positional power, not the science. And when reality kicks in, the truth will always find its way, find its out. I think the same thing will apply to vaping and other THR methods out there, is that, yes, we all agree they're not safe, but when compared, they are a lot safer. We all agree that they're not the silver bullet in helping people quit smoking, but when compared to other methods, they're incredibly successful. Yeah. And when we start having these honest discussions around what they really are and what their intended purposes are, and the results of them, we then start seeing the general public having that aha moment.
Well, yeah, you said THR, so I'm going to ask you this question. What other THR products are available to the consumer there?
So we have vaping, we have heat not burn, and we now have pouches.
Oh, you now have patches.
I firmly believe that pouches are probably going to be the big thing in Africa from a cost perspective. Mm-hmm. And also, if you think about electricity, once again, right. Only some of us are able to charge our batteries.
So it'll be easier to get a patch than a condom. That's what you're saying.
No. No.
I have to add some humor to this show every now and then.
Condoms we've got a lot of. Condoms we're not short of.
Okay, all right.
Well, we were during the lockdowns. Because,
during the lockdown, I bet that was the time you needed to invest in Trojan. If you were smart, you would have dumped all your money in condoms, lactose.
Well, the reality is that South Africa actually has their own condom, or the South African government has their own condom brand.
Yeah. Oh, I won't buy a government brand condom. That's for damn. I don't care what country I'm in. If the U.S. said here we have a government status, I would have been like, no, I'm good. I see a lot of holes in those condoms.
Why is this making such a crinkly noise?
I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like nobody funks you like the government. So it's perfect.
Is this jelly or is this? Oh, Yeah. Well,
I've never seen a condom that you can fold.
yeah, that would be it's a fun you get for
Or
your
them.
wallet. It lasts longer in your wallet. Yeah, now, how has the general public been out there as far as advocacy for you guys? Do you have a good following there, backing you guys up, or and trying to push some of these, shoot down some of these taxes and regulations, or is it just like here?
In 2018, I wish I recorded it, but unfortunately, I had a number of people around me that actually heard me say it. I said, what will kill vaping or THR is not government.
Yeah.
It's not regulations. It's not Bloomberg. It's not any other things. What will kill is apathy. Apathy from the community, apathy from the vendors, apathy from the general public. And that's always been the biggest challenge, is to have people help you walk those distances or those journeys, help you, or even just join you, not even help you, just stand behind you and walk with you and spread the word and so forth. So apathy is the biggest killer, and it's been very evident in a lot of the world,
Yeah.
especially in the United States, is that there's just this general apathy.
Yeah. Well, with Africa, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how do I say this? I mean, it's a country that is banking on other countries to come and help them out, pretty much. It's been that way for quite some time, and God, I don't know how. Yeah, it kind of doesn't. Yeah, never mind. I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to go down that road. I mean, if those are the only people that you have that are coming there to shed that information, which we all know is bullshit, but if those are the only people that are coming there and doing that and saying those things, it's almost like the general public's are like, hey. They're putting food on our tables. They're making sure we have running water. They're making sure that we have electricity 12 hours out of the day. These are the people we need to trust. And I can see it hard, talking about empathy. Those are the people that the poorer population is going to always go at that route. They're always going to stick with what the government says because the government is making sure that they're getting what they need sometimes.
Well, that's what I said. Is that half the population's on a social grant. So why would you bite the hand that feeds you?
Right.
And that's generally the issue around it. And unfortunately, we got a lot of bad legacy that we're still trying to wade through. And unfortunately, the policies that we've put in place is not helping that or improving that at all.
Yeah.
So we in this catch-22. So like I said, that in 2019 or 2018, we became a bit more active around it and started asking these questions and started forcing ourselves into these rooms to have these discussions, and started, being rather curt about it. We do get very little support, but we appreciate that support.
Right.
I do get great support from a handful of vendors in helping me share the message, in helping me,
we can send Nick Orlando your way if you like.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Get some stuff done.
He needs to get out of Florida for a little bit.
So that's our biggest challenge, is to try and motivate and activate our own community before we even start considering the general public.
Yeah.
What I do try to spend a lot of time is educating a lot of the public, particularly smokers, that we understand that you want to quit smoking. We understand it's difficult. Trust me, we really do. And we'd like to give you accurate information around these products, and help you. And we're seeing a lot of, unfortunately, it's only people of a certain economic status or class that are able to do so. And that's why we try to have these discussions with certain people in government to say, you know what, you have a big issue here. And at the end of the day, all that it's going to really impact is the individual, their family, and public health. And if tobacco is such a big problem for public health, here's a solution that could assist you in a lot faster way than you ever imagined. And you should invite these small businesses to help you on that journey. You know, I understand there has to be regulations. We have to have regulations, but they have to be risk proportionate. And if we are really true to our mantra of helping small businesses thrive in South Africa, then we need to start being a bit more pragmatic about it and apply a little bit more consequential thought around these bills and our messaging. Because we do agree that youth is an issue and we don't want it to be an issue, but we're hitting it with a bat or whack-a-mole reaction to these things just doesn't solve it. You know, we've got to do those hard miles to get the message out there and make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
But
do you think
it's going to be organic?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a. You guys are basically, you know, what it was here in the U.S. back in 2016. It was the Wild Wild West. You guys are kind of an open market right now. I'm surprised that manufacturers don't look at that and see that as a potential way of getting their products out there and having these companies come out and start offering free kits. And just try to get that out there and try to get the government to realize that this is a product that's working. I know I live in fucking cartoon dreamland a lot, but I know, you know, I'm always in that right around that area. Just to me, as like what you're saying, it is the Wild West right there. So for me, is if I were a manufacturer of a hardware or even a lead liquid company, I see a potential market that is just sitting there needing to be, you know, to flourish. And for me, I would say, hey, let's get rid of 100,000 devices. Let's send them over to Africa gets things all the time, and I can't see how the government would say no to a THR product that's coming in free for the poor people. Now, I'm not talking about your middle class or even your upper class citizens there in South Africa, but a product that's being brought in to give to these people for free to get them started and to show the government of South Africa this is something that's going to benefit your country and your people.
I think, John, the biggest problem in all of that is that you assume the government cares.
Yeah, I know that. Believe me, I know that.
You should know better than that now.
I'm thinking as a corporation. I'm always thinking that way. To me, this would be a perfect opportunity for a company like Vaporesso or one of a Geek Vape that has a nice cheap starter device that they could flood the market with out there, get to the people that need this product, and help a nation that needs help. That's how I mean.
You still run into the issue though of cost as far as refilling with the liquid and coils and everything else.
Oh, never mind. I forgot about the electricity. Yeah, I forgot about the electricity too.
It's not only that, you know, it would make sense if you had a market that had the ability to now do these things. But what is the return of that? What is the return for Vaporesso or a Smock or any other? What is their return?
Should be saving lives.
Exactly. Wow. I mean, their mission statement, if you read their mission statement is to help people quit fucking smoking. Hey, I'm sorry. They write those mission statements. If you're going to write that, stick to it, motherfucker, because if you're going to put that in your fucking mission statement, that is what your goal is to help people quit smoking. And you've made your money in the last 10, 15 years. And let's be honest. I mean, I don't know how tax regulations work in China, but, you know, 100,000 devices to them is fucking nothing, you know, to give away.
Well, one of the projects that we're kicking off again, we did a pilot last year where we took a handful of smokers that are wanting to quit, and we had devices donated, and we walked them through a 90-day challenge. We saw great success in that.
Yeah.
So we're now in March, 1st of March, kicking off version 2, which is going to be bigger. And that will be launched imminently, where we're asking South Africans that want to quit, irrespective of their background and so forth, to do the 90-day challenge, and see how successful this project can be. And we're not I'm not expecting 100%, or even a 70%. But if I can get more than 10% that manage to quit, that's more than NRTs. That's more than counseling. So, and my argument has always been, it's not a replacement. It's an add-on to the discussion. So if you have NRTs, great. It works for some people. If you have counseling, it works for some people. If you have medication, it works for some people. But now just add something to that, and now you have a far broader people of trying to quit smoking. It should never be considered as a part of the problem. It is part of the solution. And it needs to be included. Much the same as what we see in the UK. It is part of a solution. And it's something that needs to be treated as such. And when we treat it like that, we're talking about making sure that they're safe, making sure that they are regulated appropriately, and make sure that we put measurements in place. To me, it's always been about the measurement, making sure that what we're putting out there and what we have out there is measured, so we can come back to see how successful it was and what can we do to trim those sails to make sure that we're on the right path to achieving what ultimately every THR activist is out there, is helping people quit smoking. I don't care how you quit. I really don't. What I care about is that you are trying to quit and that you're successful. And if you're not successful, why aren't you successful? And what can we do to make it a success? And we're going to have people that are not going to be able to quit completely. We know this. But you can't just say throw it away because it only is 15%. According to Cochrane, 14%, 9 to 14%. You can't throw it away because the other alternatives on the cessation methods are less than that. And they're written in law. They're written in law.
3 to 5% with NRTs.
We did it on the show. We showed what the percentage of success rate with the gums and the patches, and vaping has outdone all those. And
that's it. Sorry, John. That's in environments that have it. South Africa's only said that they've approved it, but you can't get these subsidized. You still have to go purchase them, and they are incredibly expensive. For the average South African. So is vaping.
Can we get an idea of what a pack of patches is worth in South Africa?
10 cents.
No, come on. No, this is I'm very curious now because I'm calling this probably.
Paul wants to move to South Africa.
No, I don't.
So okay, let's just do this.
I'm curious now.
Do you have South Africa Amazon there?
Forget. So a box of 7 patches is $240, $13, almost $14 for a pack of 7.
It's about the same here. Yeah.
Wow.
For a 2.5% success rate, maybe 5%.
No.
It's not even that high. And the patches, 1.5%. Yeah.
The highest success rate in patches, and they were high nicotine patches, studied in a hospital with people going through orthopedic, was 3.7. That's the highest ever.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem, Paul. Our social grant is 350 Rand, which is just under $20.
Right. So there you go.
So $20, and you're spending, pretty much all of that on 7 patches versus just 44 cents on a box of
cigarettes win every time.
Yeah. So that 49 cents a fucking pack. I mean, Jesus Christ.
My headache's getting even bigger now.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then you got to take into consideration whatever their minimum. I don't know if you have a minimum wage out there, but I don't know what the average person makes per month there. But I'm sure that 49 cents looks a lot better than $13.49 or whatever it was
Yeah,
for a 60 ml bottle.
yeah,
It's not even a part of the discussion
Yeah,
because of that $20 that you're getting a month from the state, and if
Yeah.
you're even getting, let's say a real good salary for a majority of the people would be, let's say, probably $500 a month. You got to think of what am I going to feed,
right.
my
Wow.
kids? What am I
Wow.
going to,
Yeah,
how am I going to get to work? I mean, we're talking about people that have to rely on what we call taxis, transportation. We don't even have a bus service.
yeah,
We don't have train services. So how much, and this is the issue that we're facing in
yeah,
South Africa and pretty much the most of Africa is that they're literally living on nothing,
yeah.
and smoking is a way for them to
Relieve stress.
exactly, among other things.
Yeah,
So you know, so the issue is that in order for you to become smoke free, it's going to be incredibly expensive. So why even do it if your
yeah,
biggest issue in life is how do I get this bucket of water from a tap that is a mile away
yeah,
to my
yeah,
Home.
shack in the
yeah.
middle
Yeah.
of a field,
Sure.
because they don't even have running water to their houses. So
Yeah, and
the issue is
I'm sure hospitalization is thrown out the window anyway. I'm sure if you get
absolutely
sick, you get sick. I mean, you hope to God you're not,
it's
80 miles away from the nearest clinic.
you
And
know
even if
I'm
you get there, are they going to help you? Or do they have
I'm
the resources to help you?
I'm married into a medical family,
Yeah.
and a lot of our friends are doctors and specialists that work in the public health sphere, and it is frightening. I just think our lucky stars that Natasha was able to leave public service and start a private practice.
Mm.
I'm just so thankful that she was, because the pain and suffering that these people go through, and that
Yeah.
includes the staff in these hospitals, is frightening.
Yeah.
If you're having doctors actually going out, particularly my wife's a pediatrician, so a lot of our friends are pediatricians in the public health. If you're having doctors that are going out to buy formula because there's nothing in the
Yeah.
hospital to feed the babies, this is the
Wow.
level that we're talking about. Doctors are
Yeah.
actually taking their own money, going to the local pharmacy. Well, there's no local pharmacy in some of these areas, so they're traveling to a pharmacy to go buy a bottle of, or a tin of Nestle
Yeah.
formula
Crazy.
to
Crazy.
bring back to feed the babies for that day. And they even have this like scheme that this doctor does this day, this doctor does that day. In some of our hospitals, we don't even have sheets or pillows,
Yeah.
and they're lying on the floor and being serviced on lack of a better word, being looked after while they're lying on the floor. Some of our hospitals don't even have running water anymore because the whole infrastructure's collapsed. And when we have these discussions with people that are owning vape shops and so forth, and they're showing, I understand it, but
Yeah.
you've got to put it into context of what's happening around you.
yeah,
It's a real big issue, and it's an important issue. But then again, how is it compared to the other issues in South Africa? And that's why we go back to the government and say, we understand where you want to go with this, but how is it going to help anything? You know, if you had just think about
Mm.
this a little bit more pragmatically, is
Yeah.
that start, looking at THR as just another small industry that could possibly grow and service the rest of Africa, create employment, create opportunities, create programs where other young people think can come into the industry and learn skills. These are the same discussions that we're having with a whole host of other industries in South Africa, is that you're being incredibly restrictive around these
Yeah.
things, preventing growth and development and helping grow and expand. What we see now is just contraction, contraction, contraction. And it's not actually servicing the greater good of what we should be looking at. It's a huge.
Your GDP is $419 billion a year. Where are they using that money for? Fuck. Here's a smile. I got Kurt to smile. Hey, and your life expectancy is up. It's up to 65, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was 45 minutes ago. I talked about what kind of stats we use.
Are those a little?
You can't pay attention to those numbers.
We just use the control and the C.
Yeah, I did.
No, that's epic. There's a document that I put in the private chat that I'd really like to throw out there to everyone, especially you, Kurt. This is a document that was put together.
I read it last night, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kenneth Warner, Benowitz, and McNeil.
Are you putting something up for me to share?
Yeah.
Or are you just going to read it?
No, it's in the private chat. And
oh, okay. I'm sorry. I get it.
I know that you're on top of this, okay? What do you think of this document? I know this is completely left field, because this is possibly the most damaging piece of paperwork that has come out recently, and this is going to spin heads around the world.
It's the exact same document that the 15 past presidents of the SRNT said.
But they've gone into it a little bit deeper in this document.
Yeah.
Where do you think this will land in, like, helping you guys in Africa or South Africa, wherever? But we
certainly will use it and certainly communicate it and so forth. But again, whether they even accept it or even look at it, I mean, one of the biggest challenges and one of the things that I fight a lot is our South African Medical Research Council. Yeah. And asking them, because they have the ears of government, because it is a government department, and they are the custodians of science, if for lack of a better word. They're the ones that would say this is what the science says. So the question is, would they put this in their library? Would they even consider reading this journal or this particular article? Would they even consider reading it? Because I don't believe they would. And therefore, it would never even reach our Department of Health. But then again, our Department of Health are so fixated on banning tobacco. I mean, just Paul, in 2020, they literally came out and said all cigarette and vaping products are banned from being sold. Banned. I know. Just like that. So what kind of impact would this document really have? It's only when there's a ground. You said the way South Africa works is that it's about resistance from the mass. The mass resistance to something that gets the government to move the needle. It's not anything other than, what I tried to explain is that we've got an election that's coming next year. And it's only until we have this mass that want to move away from the existing government into another government. But we're going to find resistance in that too. If we, my biggest fear for next year is election fraud or political killings, like we saw in the late 90s, early 2000s, is that we're starting to see that in South Africa now. There's a lot of political assassinations in our regional areas, where people are saying, hang on, we want change, and then suddenly they disappear off the face of the earth, kind of thing. So the issue is that we've got a paper like this, fantastic paper. It puts it all out there. It's great, so forth. But who's reading it? I'm reading it, but what change can I affect? So if I get 10 people to read it, great. we need to have a lot more people reading it. And if your press, for example, in South Africa, are too scared to stick their neck out or are part of the system, like we've seen with the rest of the world, press is a big part of the system, part of the machinery, is that the only way we're going to affect change in a lot of these discussions we're having around the world is when communities and people out there stand up and say, hang on, we disagree. You guys are talking a lot of pork pies here. We need to just stand up en masse. So it's a great argument to have in those meetings when we have the opportunity to discuss, but whether they accept it or want to accept it is the other question. So it's all,
Yeah, well,
you know,
that was my question. You know, whether or not
Elon's an alien. I knew that was coming. Hey, someone asked if Elon Musk was from South Africa, and I knew somebody was going to come back with he's an alien. No, but you know that all these things that you just said about South Africa kind of blows my mind, because I all I remember reading is how they needed these balloons over Africa for Wi-Fi. And with everything that you've just told me, I'm like, why is fucking he spending all this money to put these fucking balloons that are going to give people Wi-Fi in South Africa and Africa when they don't have water, electricity, good medical health care? I mean, what the fuck? Why do I need Wi-Fi? If I was a citizen of Africa, I'd be like, why the fuck do I need Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I think it's an important thing. I really do, and I think Elon definitely wanted to do it. Unfortunately, South African law says that if you want to implement anything in the country, it has to be owned by at least 50% by a black individual. Yeah. So we have affirmative action in this country, and you know, it's not something that I want to delve into. But again, it's about that red tape and the bureaucracy that prevents development and innovation and moving forward, because the reality is that free Wi-Fi would change so many people's lives. They'll have access to the information. I know they'll have access to the news. And trust me, every South African has a cell phone, has a mobile phone. And if you are able to then provide them with access to information, not only for them to get involved in discussions, but also from an educational point of view.
Yeah, no, I get that part, but what good is it having a cell phone if you can't charge it?
Well, those are issues that are quickly resolved if we think about solar.
Yeah, solar. But how much of that information is actually being chopped up by your government before it even gets to your person that's there in Africa? I don't know how your government works there, but I'm sure if there's something negative, would they pull some of that information or block it from being sent into Africa?
I think the question is, does our government work?
Do they go to work in the morning? Do they show up?
I think the issue is that I don't believe they have the capacity to do certain things, and I also think they're spread so thin that trying to block information is not something that they are capable of doing quite yet. I think they would love to, particularly of discord inside the country. So I hope it doesn't get to a point. I know that there are laws where they want to govern domains in South Africa. So anything that has a .co.za wants to be governed, and there's a whole bunch of bureaucracy that they want to put in there. But guess what? We just moved to a .com, we moved to a .io, or we moved to a .net. It doesn't stop it, and I think when you start realizing this, and it happens, in my opinion, it's happening around the world, is that governments are thinking that they can control. Yeah. But unfortunately, the middle class and has become so self-sufficient in able to create their own solutions and their own problem solving, solve their own problems, that it's becoming very, very difficult for governments to react appropriately. And that's why we still see inappropriate actions taking place.
Before we head on out of here, a quick question for you, Kurt. Talk a little bit about the future of vaping there in South Africa and Africa. What do you see happening within the next 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years?
So I think we got this bill that we're trying to combat and trying to stop, or at least be rewritten in a more appropriate way. The biggest thing that hinges around vaping in South Africa is the amount of people that are left able to afford these products to make it a sustainable industry, because we're not seeing growth. And if there's no growth, there's effectively a retraction or contraction. There's no middle ground. There's no maintain. It's either grow or contract. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people immigrating out of South Africa, and it's the people that would have the money and resources to buy these kind of products. So we're seeing a contraction in our customer base. And unfortunately, the people that are left behind don't have the resources to grow it. I think we're probably going to see products that are aligned to big tobacco getting more market share because they are effectively a lot more cost effective. Their format and the products they sell are far more cost effective if you consider the excise that they want to apply on these products. So a Voos pod is 2 mils, so there's an additional $5.80 to their pod. It's not going to break anybody's bank, but if you're talking an extra 300 rand on that, it suddenly kills that market. But then again, we have this entire illicit trade thing. And I think it was Brad Rodu that once said,
it was.
Thank goodness for the black market. Because at the end of the day, and I don't know who quite said it, is that, and it was probably a very wise American that said that if the laws are unjust, it leaves you no option but to be a criminal. I'm paraphrasing that, but it was, I think it was Lincoln. I think it was Abraham Lincoln or one of those. Please don't quote me, but the paraphrase is that if the laws are unjust, then it's within your rights to be a criminal.
Yeah.
I actually said that many times when I was.
Don't try to take credit for it, Paul.
It wasn't you. You had a big tall hat and a big long beard. It wasn't you.
No, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Fuck's sake. I never said that as Abe Lincoln. I said, if you need to put your pirate hat on, you need to do it. If you need to help industry around the world, you need to do it. Sorry. No.
I think that the illicit trade is now going to be a reality in vaping if these laws are passed. And I'm expecting it, like we saw with illicit cigarettes, is that when it becomes too expensive, the problem is you have addiction, and let's be blunt here, nicotine is an addiction. The question is that addiction harmful? Is the appropriate question to have. But it's an addiction. No. People want it. People need it. And then you apply tax to it. What wins? It's certainly not the tax. In most cases, the addiction wins. And that urge needs to be scratched. And if you cannot afford it through a regular approach, you're going to go underground. And these are real world questions and real world problems. So in South Africa's context, there's a direct correlation in my view of excess amount of tax and restrictions has fueled the black market, the illicit market. And when you place a ban like we had in 2020, that just opened the floodgates. And once that gate is open, you're never going to recover from it. You can arrest as many people as you want. And particularly in a social environment or social economic environment we find in South Africa, where you don't have opportunities to grow and to be, I firmly believe that there's a lot of people out there that would want to buy, for example, a Marlboro or want to buy that, but they simply just can't afford
Yeah.
it. So they're going to go for the cheap illicit stuff that's coming across the border, or that doesn't meet any particular standards. They're going to go that route. But if they had the opportunity and they've been able to lift themselves up and be able to afford a lot of things, they're not going to continue with the illicit trade products. They're going to move on to the Marlboros and so forth.
Right.
So a lot of these things, and that's why, again, going right to the very beginning, none of this makes sense. It's all a J.R.R. Tolkien narrative, a story that's happening.
Yep.
You know, we may as well be talking about dwarves and dragons and elves,
Kings and queens.
because it just, none of it makes sense.
Allie, you want to close out the show there?
Yes, thank you so much for coming, Kurt. We love having you on. Learned a lot.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, definitely learned a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. I really
taking
appreciate
your
it.
time, staying up late with us, or early.
Yeah, early, much early. Thanks again, Kurt. Appreciate you coming on and sharing exactly what's going on over there. It blew me away. I knew a little bit because I told you my cousins do go to they go to Africa, Uganda, to do charitable work for a Christian church, but I knew a little bit, but I didn't realize that was the whole continent. I assumed that part of South Africa and more parts of Africa had running water, electricity, and so forth. So it kind of blew me away, more than vaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are pockets of oasis where we do have water and an inverter, like I have at the moment.
Yeah.
But the gross majority of
Yeah,
our population
nuts.
are in dire need of upliftment.
Yeah. Paul, would you like to say your goodbyes there, buddy?
I'm absolutely blown away. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you. And I'm going to do a GoFundMe just to
They don't want you over there.
No, Kurt does actually, because I just want to fuck shit up with Parliament. I'll put my hand up to do that. I don't care if I get a target on my back.
All
Right.
We're
hoping to get the likes of Clive Bates and Fossilinos or Ricardo Pulsar, people like that into the discussion. We're certainly wanting to reach out to them and saying, please, can you help contribute to the submissions? Whether we can afford to bring them across, it's something that's a bridge we have to cross. But we'll make sure that we get some balance to the discussion. That's all that we ask is bring some balance.
I agree. I agree, Kurt.
Just get a seat on the table, man. That's all we ask. Give us a seat on the table. All right, everybody. I want to thank everybody in chat. And Allie, thank you for being the host. She's going to do more of this, guys. She's going to do a lot more of this.
She is.
Yes, you are. I like being able to just kind of sit here and just click this button and that button and this button, and get to play with all the stuff on here, So, hey, Kurt, thank you again for joining us. It was awesome. You coming on. You're welcome back anytime you have something going on. Just give us a heads up, and we'll have you on the show. We appreciate it. Everybody in chat, we'll see everybody next Wednesday. Same time, same channel, same place. Thank you again, Kurt.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks.